Meet Tom and Sarah, both vegetable farmers, both just finished their season. They're fictional farmers, but the numbers we're going to use in this little story are based on real world small farm economics. Sarah made $200,000 in gross sales. Tom made just 75. Who do you think had the better year? When we peel back the curtain, Sarah worked 3,000 hours and took home $15,000 to her bank. That's $5 an hour. Tom worked just 1,500 hours and took home $35,000 for $23 an hour. Same industry, same region, radically different outcomes. The difference? The number that most farmers obsess over is hiding the truth. Today, I'm going to show you the 3 numbers that reveal what gross sales can't tell you about your business, and one of them is going to make you very uncomfortable. I'm Diego, D-I-E-G-O, and let's get into it. If we go back to Sarah's farm example, that was $200,000 in gross sales. That sounds really good on the surface. If you told somebody your farm made $200,000 this year, people would be like, whoa, that's amazing. But remember, that's gross. So this is what the numbers don't tell you. Growing costs, seed costs, soil costs, fertilizer, packaging. In this example, we're going to say it cost $53,000. Overhead such as land rent, insurance, utilities, marketing fees, $45,000. Labor, that's hired help to get the product out of the field and get it to the market, $60,000. That's $158,000 in expenses before Sarah was able to pay herself a single dollar. So that $200,000 in sales was paired with $158,000 in expenses, leaving a measly $42,000 left. $42,000, even that sounds pretty good, especially if you're a new farm, a small farm. A lot of people would like to make $42,000 a year. If we go another layer deep, the big question is how much of that 42 was Sarah able to pay herself, especially when we think about it in terms of dollars per hour. Well, we're going to say Sarah worked 60 hours a week for 50 weeks a year. That's 3,000 total hours. And from that, she paid herself $15,000 of the 42 because she had to set aside some reserves for overwintering and spring startup costs. So she took home $15,000. When you divide that by 3,000 hours, you get just $5 an hour. That's less than minimum wage in every single state for someone whose farm made $200,000. This may sound like a crazy fictitious example, but it's more representative of reality than you think. The Small Business Administration reports that half of small businesses fail within 5 years. The number one reason? Owners confuse revenue with profit, with actual money that they can live on. Sales doesn't pay your insurance and put groceries in the fridge. Profits do. So what's the difference here between Sarah and Tom? Tom tracked 3 numbers, and those numbers told him the truth and a very different story. Let's dig in. The first number that Tom tracked was net profit. It's simple. Gross sales minus all expenses equals net profit. But here's what matters. Net profit tells you if the farm itself, as a business, is viable. Remember, Sarah had $42,000 left after expenses. That's a 21% net profit margin. That's not that bad. It's actually decent. Let's look at the numbers behind Tom's farm. $75,000 in gross sales, $32,000 in expenses. That leaves $43,000 in net profit, giving him a 57% net profit margin. Tom made less than half of Sarah's gross, but his farm kept more of every dollar that came in. Why? When we look at the details, Sarah's farm grew 30 different crops, sold at 4 farmers markets, ran a 50-member CSA, did wholesale accounts. Tom, on the other hand, grew 8 high-value crops, 1 farmer's market, no CSA, no wholesale. Sarah never calculated which crops actually were profitable after labor and inputs. She just grew what customers asked for, what seemed popular, and what other farmers on the gram were doing. Tom, on the other hand, tracked his numbers religiously. He looked at numbers like the profit per bed, and he dropped anything that didn't clear at least 60% margin after all of his costs. More revenue doesn't necessarily mean more profit. This is the first truth that gross sales hides. You can know your way to bankruptcy by chasing revenue without tracking margins. But net profit tells you how your business is doing, but it doesn't tell you if you can make a living running that business. The second very important number to take a look at is called owner draw. Think of it this way. Net profit is the farm's bank account balance. Owner draw is the check you actually write to yourself from the business to pay your own bills. This is money that actually ends up in your bank account, not the business's. It's the money you live on. Sarah's farm, if we go back, remember she had $42,000 in profit and her draw was just $15,000. She left $27,000 in the farm account for equipment repairs, overwinter costs, and spring startup costs. Tom's farm, on the other hand, had $43,000 in net profit. He took $35,000 in owner draw and had $8,000 left in reserves. Sarah, $15,000 in owner draw. Tom, $35,000. Same work, same passion, same hours of skill and care, totally different take home. I know this is numbers and it's like, yeah, what does all this mean? Here's what it means in real life. $15,000 per year is just $1,250 per month. In most of the United States, that doesn't cover rent, let alone healthcare, food, transportation, and everything else. $35,000 per year is about $2,900 per month. Still not wealthy, but it's livable. It's a foundation. It's sustainable. Many farmers run profitable farms on paper. Their businesses make money, but they don't make money. There's a massive difference there, and it's a huge gap between a farm that's profitable and a farmer who can pay their bills. Owner draw is the number that tells you which one you are, a profitable farm or a farm that pays its farm owner. But there's also one more number that you really need to think about, and this one might sting a little. If you paid close attention to our story at the beginning, you might have an idea of where we're going with this and what this next number is. It's the effective hourly rate. That's the third number. Take your owner draw, divide it by the hours that you actually worked, and this number tells you what you're paying yourself per hour. And I guarantee if some of you run this number, the numbers are scary, not in a good way. Paying yourself probably wages that people in the US made 50, 75 years ago. In today's day and age, that won't work. So let's look at the fictitious example to see how we can calculate this for ourselves. Sarah had $15,000 in owner draw. She worked 3,000 hours and made just $5 per hour. The federal minimum wage right now is $7.25. Most states are going to require 12 to 15. If you're in California, forget about it. They're going to require something like 18. So there's Sarah. She worked harder than most people she knows, mastered skills most people don't have. She's running her own business, doing her thing, following her passion, living the dream. And she did it all paying herself less than minimum wage. Wah, wah. As you probably guessed, Tom's situation's a little different. $35,000 in owner draw, 1,500 hours worked. That's $23.33 per hour. That's more than the median wage for many professional jobs, and it's a wage you can start to build a life on. When you think about your effective hourly wage, this is the uncomfortable question that the number forces you to ask. Would I work for someone else at this wage? If you're only paying yourself $5, $6, $10 an hour, would you close your business and go work for somebody else for that same wage? The answer's probably no. In fact, it's probably hell no. Yet, we'll pay ourselves that and be okay with it, effectively making it a hell yes, it's all good. But we all know the real answer is no, you wouldn't work for somebody else. And if you're not running a sustainable business, you're subsidizing a dream with your life. You're not getting to your future in a successful, sustainable way. This is what Tom understood that Sarah did it. Sustainability, especially in ag, it's not just about the soil, the air, the water, the animals, the crops. It's about sustainable lifestyles. It's about whether you can sustain your life financially with the business being the main cash flow generator. So how do you actually use these numbers now that we know how to calculate them and we're aware of them? Let's make this practical. Every single farmer in the real world, no fictitious example here, needs to know their break-even point. And this is any business, not just farms. Break-even is the level of sales where revenue exactly covers all of your expenses. You don't make a profit, you don't make a loss. Here's the formula. Break-even equals fixed costs divided by the price per unit minus the variable cost per unit. What does all that mean? We'll go through an example. Let's say you sell 1 unit of lettuce for $5 per bag. Your variable costs in that bag are seeds, soil amendments, packaging, marketing fees, and if you add those up, we'll say it comes to $1.40 per bag. So the price minus your variable costs gives you your contribution margin, which is $3.60 in this example. Keep that number in mind. Now we'll look at the fixed costs for the year. When you look at the fixed costs for your farm, land, equipment, insurance, utilities, we'll say it adds up to $20,000. So you have $20,000 in fixed costs divided by $3.60 means you have to sell roughly 5,500 bags of lettuce to merely break even. And that's assuming you only sell lettuce and you sell it all for just $5 a bag. Once you know that number, you know if you don't sell that much, if you only sell 4,000, you're losing money. If you sell 7,000, you're profitable. The key here is you have to step back and say, can I even sell 5,500 bags of lettuce in my market? How many bags of lettuce is that per farmer's market per week? Or how do I get that much into my customer base? And it might quickly say, you can't just sell lettuce. You're going to have to sell something else. So you need to think about these numbers in the big scheme of things. Keep that in mind. Just because the numbers work on paper doesn't mean you can actually sell this volume of product in a given market stream. So you need to really think about that, but that's probably another thing for another video. This simple calculation, though, really helps because it tells you whether your farm model actually is going to work before you plant a single seed. 5,500 bags of lettuce. Is that even remotely possible? If it seems crazy talk, well, start over. When we start to go beyond break even, though, this is what we're going to want to track each season: the profit per crop. Which crops actually pay after labor and inputs? You're going to track revenue and expenses by crop or by bed, drop the losers, and double down on the winners. You're going to want to look at cash flow timing. Most farms are going to face a very similar cash flow pattern. In spring, a lot of money goes out to seeds, suppliers, and labor. In the summer and fall, money comes in when there's been a lot of harvesting and sales. Many farms are profitable on paper, but run out of cash mid-season because the timing doesn't match. If you go back on this YouTube channel to somewhere probably in the fall of 2024, I did a whole video on farm cash flow. If you want to dig into that, we'll try and find a link to that and stick it down below. But cash flow planning is very different than profit planning. It's another thing to know, though, because if you don't have money in your bank account when you need it, and it comes 2 months later, you're out of luck. The third thing to look at throughout the season is cost of customer acquisition. How much do you spend in money and time to get one loyal customer? Market fees, advertising, and time spent at the markets. Oftentimes, retention, keeping a customer, is cheaper than replacing a customer, so it's important to dedicate effort and time to that. And when you look at these three metrics, they're not complicated. They're easy to calculate, and they're very honest. They're going to tell you the truth about whether your farm can sustain your lifestyle as a person. We're getting away from the business, and we're now saying, can this business support me in my life? If you're fully on board, here's a path forward for you. This winter, you're going to put together a farmer's financial dashboard, 4 numbers that you're going to calculate. Dashboard item number 1 is you're going to track every expense that you have within the business, not just seeds and fertilizer, everything. Mileage, market fees, repairs, all of that stuff. And you should also be doing this in your personal life as well. But you're going to put all of it on paper, but preferably in some sort of spreadsheet like a Google Sheet, because every expense is going to be needed to tell part of the story, and every expense doesn't lie. It's a marker in time of a decision that you made. A purchase on your credit card report reflects a decision you made to purchase something. So we want to track that. It's very valuable. Dashboard item number 2 is pay yourself something. Even if it's $100 that first month, you want to build the habit of separating owner pay from farm money. A lot of business owners might think, I can't afford to pay myself, so they keep all the money in the business. Well, you can change that and just pay yourself a small amount. It starts to build the habit. It shows that money is leaving the business, coming to your personal bank account, and it helps just from an emotional standpoint of making it feel like you're not just working for nothing. Your labor has value in reality, so you should treat it that way and pay yourself something. Even if it's not, if you can't afford as much as you think you should ultimately get paid, something here is better than nothing. Dashboard item number 3, calculate your effective hourly rate. You're going to do this at the end of the season and be honest with yourself. Would you work for someone else at this wage? Not, you got to fix things. Now, in order to calculate your effective hourly wage, one thing you will need to track throughout the year is your hours worked. You need to have a rough idea. And if you're going to estimate how much you worked the previous year, don't shortcut it. If you know you worked 80 hours a week, don't be like, I worked 60, because it makes the numbers look a little better. If anything, error high. Think you worked 80, say you worked 85, and see where those numbers actually shake out. The 4th dashboard item is to run an 80-20 analysis. Which 20% of your crops or customers brought in 80% of your returns? That's the classic Pareto principle or 80-20 principle at work, and it applies to farms and life just like it would any other business. Next season, you're going to focus on those 20% of customers and crops that really paid. And you're going to write these numbers down so you know them, pin them above your desk, and review them all the time to not let yourself stray when you flip through the seed catalog and quinoa or tomatillos are calling your name. You look up there and you say, 80-20. You're part of the 80. Sorry, you're not in my 20% club. I can't have you. The numbers here should help guide your business decisions, and then they'll ultimately help guide life decisions for you. And I want you to leave thinking that numbers are only as good as the accuracy of the numbers. Numbers are only as good as you adhere to them. You can have all this in a spreadsheet, but if you don't follow any of it or use it to make decisions or use it to make better decisions, there's no point in doing it. So there is an action that you have to take along with calculating these numbers. You really have to buy in and say, this is the life that I lead when I manage my farm. Don't just calculate all this and let it die on a spreadsheet. If you're going to do that, I guess you learned a little bit, but there's really no point in doing it. Remember, Sarah didn't fail because she wasn't hardworking. She didn't fail because she lacked skill. She struggled because she was tracking and chasing the wrong number, gross revenue. Tom, on the other hand, succeeded because he knew the difference between revenue and profit, between profit and owner pay, and between gross sales and hourly wage. He built his farm around metrics that actually mattered. Gross sales make great headlines for YouTube videos. Works for me. Podcast titles and Instagram posts and just telling people to sell your online courses. People are attracted to big, high numbers, but they don't tell the full story. They don't pay your bills. And if you run your farm right, you'll find that market farming can be very profitable as long as you manage costs. So oftentimes if you do take care of the gross revenue and you manage costs, you'll find that you are profitable. So track your numbers, net profit, which tells you if your farm is viable, your owner draw, which tells you if you can live off this farm, and your effectively hourly rate to decide if this is even worth your time to begin with. Your farm deserves to be more than in survival mode. You, as a business owner, should owe yourself to do this so you're not just wasting time on a dream that never has a chance to become a reality. Your farm can work, and it deserves to be the business that sustains your life, just not the land. And I know a lot of you work really hard out on the land. Now it's time to work really hard off the land, in the office, on the numbers, so this thing can be your thing for a very long time. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought about this video in the comments below. Appreciate the feedback as always, and I'll see you another one to help you and your farm become more profitable. Until then, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.